Hey Soul Surfers, welcome back to Waves of Consciousness with my spiritual ocean. My name is Alicia. Today we are going to ride the mental health and manifestation waves, and we're going to talk about mental diet, what it is, why it matters, and why a strict mental diet can be detrimental to your manifestation journey. So if you're all set, let's go ahead and dive on in. If you would like to work with me one-on-one, you can book services online at www.myspiritualocean.com. Let's start this off by talking about what a mental diet is. A mental diet is like a food-related diet in that it's what you're feeding yourself. But a mental diet is what you're feeding your mind. And that could be thoughts, emotions, etc. All over the manifestation community, you'll probably hear how important your mental diet is and how it's important to have a strict mental diet in order to manifest what you want. But the only issue with this narrative is that your thoughts are not the only thing that create your reality. Your thoughts are just part of a larger picture. And in fact, the types of thoughts you have and how you respond to them or react to them or act on them or not act on them is a byproduct of the state of being you're in and what belief is activated. So when people focus only on their thoughts, they're bypassing a lot of other aspects of themselves, and that's why so many people feel stuck while manifesting, including me at one point. I want to share a story with you about how I came to realize that having a strict mental diet is not always better, and in fact, it can cause a lot of other issues as well. I don't usually do trigger warnings on my videos, but I'm going to speak about my struggles with food and body image in this next part of this video. So this story begins with my personal struggle with food and dieting throughout my life. This feels a little challenging to talk about sometimes, and it's a little bit vulnerable. But I've had food-related issues most of my life. When I was a kid, I was shamed for my body and my weight by peers and also by family members. I was given mixed messages about food, so I would be told there's starving children in some other country and to clean my plate, but then when I cleaned my plate, I would get made fun of for eating too much. And I also grew up watching other people's poor relationships with food. And all of these factors coupled together led me to having a poor relationship with food my whole life and also a lot of disordered eating behaviors. I've lost over 100 pounds twice, only for me to gain it all back, and then some in most cases. I would cycle through binging, purging, restricting, and I'd probably done every diet under the sun you could imagine. From food ordering services, to keto, to diet pills. I think I did the Master Cleanse quite a few times. Do not recommend. Ugh. I don't even want to think about it, actually. But all of that to say, none of it was really working. Actually, it was outwardly working. I did have some level of success with a couple of the diet plans, but I was bound to them because when I stopped doing them, I didn't have the skills to live in a world without relying on that diet or that restriction or whatever I was relying on depending on the plan I was on. And I also felt like I was missing out on life because I would avoid putting myself in scenarios where I would have an opportunity to stray from my plan. Or if I went into those scenarios, I would be so hyper-focused on the food and not eating it and not doing anything wrong that I actually wasn't very present in the scenarios I was in because I was so focused on this internal struggle that I was having trying to restrict or not do something wrong that would, skew or make my results not be what I wanted them to be. But more importantly, all of these diet plans weren't dealing with the root cause. They were focused on the symptoms of what was going on underneath, but never the root cause. And so even though these diets appeared to work because I was losing weight, they weren't really sustainable. And then when I would stop doing them, I would beat myself up, think there was something wrong with me, I didn't have enough willpower, etc., etc. But that was really just making things worse and kind of perpetuating the cycle at the root. So what does this all have to do with mental diet? Well, after my slew of food issues and food diets, I came across something called intuitive eating. Now, intuitive eating is where you allow yourself unconditional permission to eat what it is that you want. It's not about weight loss, but living a sustainable life where you learn to trust yourself and your body and what it needs. So as I looked into intuitive eating and learning more about it and started to put it into practice, I noticed that the more that I allowed myself to have the things that I had been restricting for so long, the more I allowed them and had them around, the more I didn't crave them or actually want them over time. Now, at first, all of those foods that I had, I did binge on them, but the more they became available and I didn't have the scarcity or lack mindset around them, the less I was drawn to them because it was just always going to be there so I could have it whenever I wanted. I didn't have to have it on a cheat day or lie about how much of it I had ate, which would also bring a lot of shame and guilt too, which also perpetuated the cycle. So as I practiced that and was doing this with food in my life, it made me realize that if that's how it is with food diets, it's probably how it is with mental diets too. So anytime you're on a diet, you're usually restricting something, whether it's sugar or fat or carbs or whatever new ingredient has been demonized by the general public. Now, in the manifestation world, this translates to restricting your negative thoughts. Now, I take issue with this for a few reasons. One is that your negative thoughts are only negative because you say they are, and that's usually because you have some sort of negative or unfavorable association with them. And number two is that you're not actually restricting your thoughts, you're restricting the emotions that are underlying those thoughts. And that's what you're actually most afraid of. And there could be many reasons why you're afraid of them. You probably have negative associations with the emotions in general. Some other reasons are that you may not have the emotional regulation skills yet, or those painful emotions take you back to a time when you felt them before, but they were left unprocessed. Now, the problem with restriction in general is when you are restricting something, and especially for a long time, when you stop restricting it, you swing completely the opposite way. And I call this the pendulum effect. So imagine a pendulum. I'm going to get a pendulum. I have one. Got it. Now, if you're listening to this on a podcast, you should still be able to understand this. But if you want the visual, you can check out the YouTube video version of this. Okay, so here's the pendulum. If you take the pendulum and you pull it off to the side and you hold it up, restricting its flow of motion, and then let go of it, it's going to swing pretty far to the other side at first. But watch as it goes. It slowly swings back and forth, and eventually it settles in the middle to its neutral, balanced state. So when you've stopped restricting the flow of that energy and allow it to go, sure, at first it swings really far to the other side, but eventually it settles in the middle to the neutral, balanced state. Now let's talk about this in the context of your thoughts. When you've been restricting your thoughts for so long and you start allowing your thoughts in, they may all come flooding in at once when you stop avoiding them. And it's not that they haven't been there all along, you just haven't noticed them, and now they are in your awareness because you had been avoiding them in the past. And it was probably unconsciously that you were avoiding them for the reasons mentioned before. You don't like how they make you feel, just in denial. Sometimes people are in denial of how things are. But once you become aware and you start practicing presence, you will notice these thoughts come in because they're energy that have been restricted. They need somewhere to go. So just like the pendulum, when you start allowing those thoughts and consciously becoming aware of them, they are just going to kind of swing and a lot may come in at once. So when you start doing this and you start allowing those thoughts in without holding on to them or attaching to them, eventually they will start to neutralize and balance themselves out. So when you start doing this, it can feel pretty overwhelming at first. So it's okay if you can't sit with them all at once. Listen to your system. I talk about this a lot. Sometimes that can overwhelm the system, having too much coming in at the same time. But the more you practice letting go of these thoughts without holding on to them, the more they're going to balance and neutralize themselves, and they'll just keep it going. And this is something I wish I had known about meditation sooner, because when I learned about meditation, I was trying to stop my thoughts. They tell you, like, when you meditate, clear your mind, like nothing's supposed to go on in there. And then I heard Sadhguru say that if you stopped your thoughts, you would be dead because the whole point of the brain is to have thoughts. So that's when I learned it really wasn't about stopping the thoughts. It was about observing them and not attaching to them or fighting them or getting tied up in them. Now, eventually over time, my mind was able to clear itself. But at first, I was constantly trying to fight or avoid, and then I get mad because I couldn't clear my mind, and then it made it worse. So meditation is really just about, it's really about just letting the thoughts go and not getting attached to them, seeing them, noticing they're there, saying, hey, what's up? You can move along now. Thanks for hanging out. So again, the more that you bring awareness to these thoughts and just let them go, practice letting them go without attaching anything to them, that's when they'll balance and neutralize. Now, the key is that you're not even really just allowing your thoughts, you're allowing the uncomfortable emotions that are associated with those thoughts to surface so you can process them. So when you allow these emotions to surface and process them without restricting them, naturally those thoughts are going to bypass more and more quickly. And they'll start naturally shifting on their own too. You'll have more quality thoughts that are in line with the things that you actually want to experience. And just know that this takes practice. Everyone is unique and individual. We have different levels of restricting we've been doing. So sometimes our pendulum might need to swing a few more times than someone else's, but don't compare yourself to somebody else. That just makes it worse. And that's also a story in itself. But just like the pendulum, when you start allowing the thoughts and the emotions, they don't just stop usually. They're going to swing. And then the more you practice consistently allowing and releasing without judgment, thoughts and emotions, everything will settle down. And it'll be, instead of like peaks and valleys of, and like highs and lows of negative thoughts and then like feeling blissful, it'll be more like little moguls, and it'll be easier to go through them. When I started learning about manifestation, I got caught up in the whole your thoughts create your reality narrative. And so I would constantly fight my thoughts, and it was taking such a toll on my mental health. And it also was keeping me stuck when I was manifesting. So I really felt like I wasn't making progress. It felt like nothing was changing, and it also burnt me out. I actually created a podcast episode called Manifestation Burnout, what it is and how you can prevent it. And you can check that out if you're interested. But the reason I created that podcast episode was because I was learning as I was talking to people, I wasn't the only one who had this experience. Just flipping my thoughts, feeling like nothing was changing, and just feeling generally stuck. So I constantly was trying to flip my thoughts because I was so afraid of my thoughts manifesting. But if you are doing something out of fear, that's the energy that you're sending out and perpetuating for yourself. And that energy is what is supporting your patterns and driving you to do the things that you do or don't do. So face your fears and stop giving your power away to your thoughts. They are just energy like everything else. They're just giving you information about an underlying belief that has been activated, as well as any unresolved emotional attachment you may have to those thoughts. If you're feeling overwhelmed by your thoughts and want to shift your thought patterns more efficiently and easily, the emotion code, body code, and belief code may be able to help. You can learn more on my website at www.myspiritualocean.com. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining me. I will catch you on the next wave.